Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Rich from DGMono, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to share my thoughts and feelings about this whole MoFi-gate. I'm sure you all know at this point that Mobile Fidelity has been cutting records from DSD, digital copies of original master tapes, for several years. They skirted around the issue of notifying the consumer of that, and a lot of people are disappointed. I can understand why. If you're a customer that you've been paying $125 for one-step reissues and they weren't what you thought they were. One thing that I think is interesting about this whole thing is the idea that something being all analog in some people's minds justifies the cost of those one-step reissues. So the fact that it's all analog makes it worth $125 new retail price. If you take away the all analog aspect of it, the question I would have for anybody who's watching and would be willing to share their feelings on it, how much would you pay for the same process knowing that it has that digital step in it? I've never heard the MoFi stuff in person, the one steps. Actually, I take that back. I've probably heard MoFi stuff in person. I just wasn't really aware of it. But yeah, no, I've never owned any. So, you know, I don't really have a dog in the fight in that sense. And I've argued with people for years about honesty and listening and the difference between digital and analog, and the fact that both formats have their strengths and weaknesses, and that I don't believe it's a black and white issue that analog is always better than digital or vice versa. Another thing that has come up a lot of times in conversation is the idea of certain reissue programs and people not knowing if there's a digital step or not, right? If the vinyl is made from a digital transfer or from the original master tapes. Original Jazz Classics is probably one of the best examples of this for jazz collectors, right? People haven't really known for sure what's going on with those reissues since, like, say, the 1990s, when digital was really popping off. And so it's interesting to think about that, and to also have to deal with certain personalities that suggest that they can hear when there is a digital step. Man, I gotta say, I've never heard a record and thought, I think there's a digital step in this. Of course, this is relevant to the current controversy because so many people were touting these MoFi records for years, believing they were all analog. I love both formats, and I think they both have their strengths and weaknesses, and both have a time and a place to be utilized where one would be better than the other in my life. For some reason, in like the record collector world and the audiophile world, it's digital that I feel like more often than not gets a bad rap and doesn't really get the fair shake that it deserves. If anything comes out of this, I would like to see that come out of it, that people are more open, especially audiophiles and collectors are more open to the digital experience. On the subject of whether or not they were lying or being dishonest, at first when I heard about this, I was like, well, it says original master recording on the top of the jacket, and it says one step, and it says, I went to their website and it said made from the original analog master tapes or whatever, and I thought, is not telling the whole truth lying? And I guess it depends. It depends on the situation. You know, but my friend who actually owns several of these one steps sent me some photos of like the liner notes and stuff, and they made it visual. They even made it visual. And then you go on and you hear about them lying to Michael Fremer and them lying to people in emails about it being all analog, like using that specific language, and YouTube videos from the past where they've said that. And at that point I was like, okay, yeah, this was pretty dishonest. Not the mastering engineers, of course, that were interviewed by Mike Esposito, you know, but the management and the promotional team of Mobile Fidelity and Music Direct seems like they made a pretty big mistake here. I don't really care if there's a digital step in a record, definitely not at this point. I will admit that for years with the Blue Note 75th anniversary reissues, I poo-pooed them because I knew that they were made from a digital transfer. But a couple of years ago, I just started to tell myself, you know, what's the big deal, you know? I think a couple years ago, I finally realized that vinyl is more about the tactile experience than it is some principle of all analog. Because the truth is for a while when I would buy OJCs and when I would buy like Japanese pressings like Toshiba's, I would try to get the oldest one that I could because in principle I just wanted it to be all analog. I felt that made it a little more special. It wasn't because I thought I could hear the difference if there was a digital step or not, but oh, there was another thing that someone on the Steve Hoffman forum sent me a private message and asked me, why are the Blue Notes all analog and all this other stuff isn't, right? And I just so happened to be on the phone with Kevin Gray yesterday. I was so privileged and fortunate to be in that situation. And, I asked Kevin about that, and he said, quite simply, it's because he is so close to the Blue Note vault. And it's secure enough and safe enough, and it's easy enough for them to get the master tapes to Kevin's mastering studio. And over the last couple days, I feel like I've been listening to people talk more and more about this stuff, people that are further up in the ranks in the industry, people like Michael Fremer, for example. And it sounds like there's a lot of vinyl cut from digital out there that people don't really know about. And it's probably a lot of cases it's not that the company's being dishonest, but it's come to light that Sony doesn't let out any master tapes anymore, for example. So yeah, for us jazz fans, we should consider ourselves very fortunate that that Kevin and Blue Note are in such close proximity to each other that they can have this great relationship and that we can get these all analog pressings from Blue Note. Yeah, that's my take, guys. So take it or leave it. Let me know what you think in the comments. That's fine. And I'll see you next time.